A Roman official presses his ring into warm wax, sealing a scroll that could move armies. These small objects held the power to command legions, seal fates, and hide secrets from the gods themselves. This is the untold story of Roman signet rings. By the end of this journey, you will understand how these rings were far more than jewelry. They were the ultimate keys to identity, power, and even magic in the ancient world. We will uncover why a soldier was buried with his iron ring, and how an emperor's seal became a weapon of propaganda. What single object from our own time do you think holds a similar, hidden power over our lives? At its heart, a Roman signet ring was a tool, a piece of essential personal equipment as vital as a key is to us today. This was not mere decoration for a wealthy citizen's finger. It was a functional device built for a single, critical purpose: to make your mark. The design was brilliantly simple and effective. A metal band, often crafted from gold for senators and emperors, formed the base. For a soldier or a merchant, this band might be made of more practical and affordable iron or bronze, but the true power of the ring lay in its face, the bezel. Set into this metal setting was a gemstone, typically a semi-precious stone like carnelian, jasper, or onyx, and this is where the real magic happened. The surface of this gem was not left smooth. Instead, a highly skilled artisan would carve a design into it, but with a crucial twist: the image, whether a portrait of the emperor, a symbol of a god, or a family crest, was carved in reverse, sunken down into the stone. This technique is known as intaglio. So when the ring's owner pressed this carved gem into a soft substance like warm wax or damp clay, the sunken design would create a raised, positive, and perfectly legible impression. This small, crisp seal was a stamp of identity, an unbreakable signature in an age without photographs or digital passwords. It proved that a document was genuine, that an order was authentic, and that the authority of the person behind the ring was real. This unique impression made the signet ring the ultimate symbol of identity and authority in ancient Rome. Think of it as a combination of your driver's license, your corporate stamp, and your personal email signature, all fused into a single piece of jewelry worn on your hand. For a Roman citizen, their ring's design was as distinct as a modern fingerprint. No two intaglio carvings were exactly alike, making every seal a one-of-a-kind mark that was incredibly difficult to forge. This was not just about art, it was about absolute verification. Imagine a Roman general dispatching orders to a distant legion. The scroll itself was just words. But the moment he pressed his ring into the soft wax sealant, that document transformed. It carried his direct command, his unshakable authority. To break that seal without permission was a serious offense, a direct challenge to the power of the man who sent it. This practice extended into every corner of Roman life. A senator would use his ring to validate a political decree. A merchant would seal a business contract for a shipment of olive oil, his personal mark guaranteeing the terms. A father would authenticate his last will and testament, ensuring his property passed to the correct heirs with the stamp of his family's crest. The ring was so deeply tied to the individual that to physically possess someone else's signet was, in a very real sense, to wield their power and identity. This is why a trusted freedman might be given his patron's ring to conduct business, a gesture of immense faith. Conversely, if an enemy captured your ring, they could, in theory, issue orders in your name, access your wealth, and unravel your legacy. The ring was not merely a symbol of power, it was power itself, solidified in wax and worn on a finger. Long before gold gleamed on the fingers of senators, the signet ring was a tool of stark utility. Its story in Rome does not begin with imperial grandeur, but with the practical needs of a fledgling republic. The earliest Roman rings were profoundly simple objects, often crafted from nothing more than iron or bronze. These were not statements of wealth, they were instruments of state. In those early centuries, the right to wear and use such a ring was narrowly reserved, a privilege granted to magistrates for sealing official documents and to priests for authenticating religious decrees. The designs carved into these humble metal bezels were often equally austere, featuring basic symbols of office or simple geometric patterns. This sober beginning was a direct inheritance from neighboring cultures, particularly the sophisticated Etruscans and the Greeks, from whom the Romans adopted and adapted the core concept of the personal seal. The ring's evolution is a perfect mirror of Rome's own astonishing transformation. Just as the city-state on the Tiber grew from a modest settlement into the heart of a sprawling empire, so too did its signature object of authority. The simple iron ring of an early Republic magistrate would, over centuries, become the ornate, gem-encrusted gold ring of an emperor, its heavy weight and intricate carving a testament to the vast power now concentrated in a single hand. This journey from humble tool to ultimate status symbol tells us more than any history book about the changing soul of Rome itself. Carving a secret into the face of a gem required a level of skill that borders on the superhuman. The Roman gem cutter did not work with chisels and hammers. His tools were far more delicate and relentless. His primary instrument was the bow-driven drill, a simple yet brilliant device. Imagine a small handheld spindle with a needle-sharp tip, often made of hardened iron or even diamond dust. A length of cord was wrapped around the spindle and attached to a small bow. By moving the bow back and forth, the cutter could spin the drill bit at a high, controlled speed. But this spinning point alone could not scratch the surface of a stone as hard as carnelian or onyx. The true magic lay in the abrasive. The craftsman would use a fine powder, often emery or corundum dust, mixed with a little olive oil to create a gritty paste. He would place this paste on the stone and then apply the spinning drill bit. The abrasive particles, trapped between the metal and the gem, did the actual cutting, slowly and meticulously grinding a groove into the unyielding surface. This was a process of immense patience. To create the intricate lines of a god's profile or the delicate wings of an eagle, the artisan had to work entirely in reverse, visualizing the final, raised impression his sunken carving would create. Every stroke was permanent. A single slip of the hand, a moment of miscalculated pressure, and weeks of work could be ruined, the valuable gemstone rendered useless. This was not merely art. It was a form of precision engineering on a microscopic scale, a testament to a craftsman's steady hand, his keen eye, and his profound understanding of how light and shadow would later play across his finished, three-dimensional signature in wax. But this functional tool of wax and authority also possessed a soul of pure belief. Beyond sealing documents, the Roman signet ring was a deeply personal talisman, a piece of portable magic worn on the hand. The image carved into its stone surface was far more than a simple signature. It was a conduit to the divine, a direct link to the power of the gods. A legionary marching into battle might press his ring into clay not to send a letter, but to focus his prayers, his carved image of Mars, the god of war, channeling ferocity and courage directly into his heart. A senator facing a difficult political decision would look to the image of Minerva, goddess of wisdom, on his ring, seeking her guidance with every turn of the bezel on his finger. These were not passive decorations, they were active, working symbols of faith. The terrifying visage of the Gorgon's head, with its serpent hair and stony gaze, was a particularly popular motif. It was not chosen for its horror, but for its power. The Romans believed this image could literally petrify evil, turning malevolent forces and the envious glances of rivals to stone before they could harm the wearer. It was a shield against the evil eye, a piece of defensive magic carved in miniature. Even the eagle, that ultimate symbol of Roman legions and Jupiter's own messenger, was more than a patriotic emblem. To have this majestic bird carved into your ring was to carry a spark of Jupiter's own sky-filling authority and protection with you. Can you feel the weight of that belief? This small object was a key, a signature, and a sacred charm, all fused into one. It was a physical anchor for hope and a shield against the unseen dangers of the ancient world. The carved scenes on these gemstones reveal a hidden gallery of personal ambition. Each ring became a window into its owner's soul, a miniature stage where private virtues and public personas performed for an audience of one. The choice of a specific mythological hero or god was never a random decoration. It was a deliberate, curated statement of self, a declaration of the qualities an individual most admired or wished to project. A battle-hardened general leading legions on the frontier would not select just any warrior. He might choose the formidable Achilles, a symbol of near-invincible strength and martial rage, a clear message about the kind of ferocity he demanded from his soldiers and from himself. Conversely, a senator known for his eloquent speeches and political cunning might see his own reflection in the crafty Odysseus, the hero whose intelligence and silver tongue were just as powerful as any sword. For a philosopher or a teacher, the wise, questioning face of Socrates on their ring bezel served as a constant reminder of their life's pursuit, a commitment to truth and reason etched in stone. Even family history played a powerful role. A man from an old, distinguished family might commission a scene of Aeneas, the mythical founder of Rome, carrying his father from the burning ruins of Troy. This was not just a popular myth, it was a direct claim to a legacy of piety, duty, and noble origins. These tiny intaglios were more than personal branding. They were a form of ancient psychology, a way for a Roman to publicly align his own life story with the grand, timeless narratives of gods and heroes. Every time he glanced at his hand, he was reminded of the ideal he strived to become. That personal gallery of myth and identity reached its most powerful form on the finger of the emperor himself. Here, the signet ring was transformed into an instrument of state propaganda, a tool to project a unified imperial image across millions of people. The emperor's seal was the ultimate authenticator, the final mark that turned a thought into law. When his ring pressed into the wax sealing an official decree, that impression was not merely a signature. It was the voice of Rome itself, given physical form and dispatched to every corner of the empire. This concept of a single, authoritative ring representing the head of state echoes even today in the ring of the fisherman used by each new pope. For the Romans, the first emperor, Augustus, mastered this symbolic power. He understood that consistency was key to building a lasting legacy. His signet ring did not feature a hero from myth, but a sphinx. This mysterious hybrid creature became his personal brand, a symbol of his guarded wisdom and inscrutable power. Every document, every order, every letter that bore the raised image of the Sphinx in its wax seal carried a clear, silent message. This comes directly from Augustus. His authority is as ancient and potent as the riddles of the Sphinx itself. Later emperors took this idea even further, replacing symbolic animals with their own faces. To receive a scroll sealed with the miniature portrait of the emperor was a powerful, intimate experience for a provincial governor or a legion commander. It was as if the emperor himself was in the room, his gaze fixed upon you, his command direct and personal. This practice turned the emperor's likeness into a symbol of the state's unbroken authority, a constant visual reminder of who held power, no matter how far from Rome you were. The ring was no longer just a tool of administration. It became a tiny, mobile monument to the man who ruled the world. A cornucopia spilling fruit onto the wax seal was more than a pretty picture. It was a direct claim to wealth and prosperity. This horn of plenty was the ancient equivalent of a corporate logo for a wealthy landowner or a merchant who dealt in grain. It silently announced, "My fields are fertile and my trade is bountiful." Then there is the caduceus, a staff entwined by two serpents. Today we might associate it with medicine, but to a Roman, this was the unmistakable symbol of Mercury, the swift-footed god of commerce, travel, and communication. A banker sealing a loan document with this image was invoking divine favor for a profitable transaction. A merchant affixing it to a shipping manifest was asking for Mercury's protection over his goods and the messengers who carried them. This was the mark of a man whose life was built on trade and negotiation. For those who relied on physical might, the Club of Hercules was a powerful statement. Carved onto the ring of a gladiator, a soldier, or even a construction foreman, this simple, brutal weapon spoke a universal language of raw strength and unyielding endurance. It said, "My power comes from my own two hands." Perhaps the most clever symbol of all was the rudder, often shown resting on a globe. This is not about sailing, it was a profound metaphor for fortune itself. The rudder represented guidance and control over one's destiny, steering the ship of life through the unpredictable seas of fate. A successful individual might choose this motif to declare that his good fortune was not mere luck, but the result of his own skillful navigation through life's challenges. The real magic happened when these symbols were combined, creating a layered personal statement. A single ring might feature the caduceus for commerce crossed with the rudder of fortune, telling a story of a self-made merchant who believed he had expertly steered his own path to success. Another might show the club of Hercules beside a cornucopia, a declaration that great abundance was earned through immense personal strength and effort. To understand this language is to listen to the silent boasts, prayers, and life stories that Romans wore on their hands every single day. That silent language of symbols and boasts was not reserved for the wealthy elite. For the common Roman soldier, his signet ring was arguably his most vital personal possession. Far from the gold and intricate gems of a senator, a legionary's ring was a piece of functional, standard-issue equipment, typically forged from simple, durable iron. It was built to withstand the harsh realities of military life, from the grit of a long march to the clash of a shield wall. The design carved into its iron bezel was often just as pragmatic. Many bore the official emblem of the Soldiers' Legion, a powerful symbol of unit pride and identity. This could be the charging boar of the 20th Legion, the mighty bull of the 8th, or the mythical sea goat, the Capricorn, for the legions founded by Augustus. Other soldiers opted for simpler, more personal motifs, a single letter for their name, a small animal, or a geometric pattern that was easy to carve and hard to wear away. This humble iron ring was the soldier's key to daily life in the army. He used it to sign for his pay, pressing the legion's bull or his own mark into a wax tablet to confirm he had received his silver coins. He used it to seal personal letters home, the impression in the wax assuring his family that the words of love or reassurance truly came from his hand. The ring was his signature, his military ID, and his most tangible connection to the world he had left behind. And in a final, profound testament to its importance, this iron ring was often buried with him. If he fell in battle far from Rome, his comrades would lay his ring to rest on his finger. This was not a mere sentimental gesture. Romans believed the ring was essential for the journey to the afterlife. It was the key that would identify his soul to the gods of the underworld, proving who he was and what he had accomplished in life. In death, as in life, his identity was sealed in iron. Yet this profound trust placed in a single object inevitably created a shadow world of crime and deception. The very features that made a signet ring so secure, its unique hand-carved design, also presented an irresistible target for forgers and thieves. A skilled gem cutter with a dishonest heart could make a fortune by creating counterfeit rings. These criminals would study the public seals of wealthy merchants or powerful politicians, then painstakingly engrave a copy of the design onto a blank gemstone. They worked in secret, using the same bow drills and abrasives as honest artisans, but their goal was fraud. With a convincing fake ring, a forger could seal a forged contract, transferring ownership of a vineyard or a shipment of grain to himself. He could create a fake will, disinheriting a man's true family and funneling the estate to his own accomplices. The potential for financial ruin and social chaos was enormous. But forgery was not the only threat. The physical theft of a ring was an even more direct and devastating crime, since possessing the ring was akin to possessing the person's identity. Stealing it was an act of ultimate betrayal. A dishonest slave or a jealous political rival could pocket the ring during a distracted moment. With that small piece of metal and stone, the thief could access sealed storage rooms, empty bank accounts, or even issue false orders that could dismantle a career or provoke a lawsuit. The Roman courts were filled with cases centered on this very crime. The famous orator Cicero, in his legal speeches, provides us with dramatic, real-world examples. In one case, a man was accused of using a stolen signet to seal a document that falsely incriminated a rival. The entire argument hinged on the integrity of that wax impression. Could the seal have been forged? Was the ring truly stolen? The fate of the accused rested on the jury's belief in the uniqueness of that tiny carved image. These legal battles reveal a deep-seated Roman anxiety. In a society built on the authority of the seal, the line between truth and lies was as fragile as a disk of warm wax. The fragility of that wax seal met its ultimate test in the fires of Mount Vesuvius. When the volcano buried the towns of Pompeii and Herculaneum in a thick shroud of ash, it did not destroy history. It preserved it with terrifying intimacy, freezing thousands of lives in a single, catastrophic moment. Among the most poignant finds from this frozen time capsule are the signet rings discovered still encircling the finger bones of the victims. These are not artifacts displayed in a museum case. They are the final, personal possessions of people caught in a disaster. In one home, archaeologists uncovered the skeleton of a wealthy woman who had tried to flee with her most valuable belongings. On her finger was a gold ring featuring a finely carved intaglio of the goddess Fortuna, her wheel of fortune forever stilled. This is not a random choice. The woman had placed her faith in the goddess of luck and fate, wearing her divine protector on her hand until the very end. In another location, the skeleton of a man was found clutching a small bag of coins, his simple iron signet ring still in place. Its design was a common symbol of commerce, a cornucopia, revealing him to be a merchant or shopkeeper. In his final moments, he had seized his money and fled, his identity and his livelihood literally on his finger. These rings transform anonymous skeletons back into people with hopes, professions, and beliefs. They tell us that when everything was lost, these individuals were still defined by the tiny carved symbols they carried. The volcanic ash did not just capture their bodies, it captured their identities, sealed forever in metal and stone. That merchant sealing his grain contract could not rely on a simple handshake. In the sprawling, interconnected economy of the Roman Empire, a deal made in a port city like Ostia had to be enforceable in a court in Alexandria. This demanded a system of trust that could travel, and the signet ring provided exactly that. For any significant business transaction, the ritual was always the same. After the terms of a contract were written on a papyrus scroll or a wax tablet, the document would be rolled or folded and tied with a string. The final, crucial step was to take a small lump of soft clay and press it over the knot, forming a sealed lump known as a bulla. Then, each party to the agreement would press their personal signet ring firmly into the damp clay. This created two or more unique, raised impressions, locked in place as the clay hardened. This sealed bulla was a legal fortress. To read the contract's contents, you had to break the clay seal, a clear act of tampering that would invalidate the agreement. Imagine a banker in Rome issuing a loan to a ship owner. The banker's ring, perhaps bearing the caduceus of Mercury, and the ship owner's ring, maybe showing a rudder, would be pressed side by side into the clay bulla. That small disk of hardened clay was the contract. It proved that both parties had willingly agreed to the terms at that specific moment. The same process secured everything from the sale of a farm, where the bulla proved the transfer of land ownership, to a simple receipt for a delivery of olive oil amphora. Without your ring, you were commercially paralyzed, unable to finalize deals, access stored wealth, or prove your side of any dispute in front of a magistrate. Your ring was your economic life, solidified in clay and worn on your finger. These rings emerge from the earth in whispers and shouts. Some are found with painstaking care by archaeologists brushing away centuries of soil from the floor of a Roman villa in Britain, their context revealing a story of domestic life abruptly abandoned. Others come to light by pure chance, turned up by the blade of a modern farmer's plow in a French field, or discovered by a metal detectorist scanning a hillside in Germany. Each discovery is a message in a bottle from the ancient world, but how it is found dictates how much of that message we can truly understand. A ring unearthed in a professional excavation of a military fort on the German frontier tells a rich, detailed story. We know it belonged to a soldier. We can see it was lost near the barracks, and its iron construction and simple carved emblem confirm a military life. Its entire history is preserved, but a ring found alone, out of context by a treasure hunter, is a beautiful mystery. We have the object, but its story, its owner, and its reason for being in that spot are often lost forever. The key to unlocking these stories lies in the very environments that preserve the rings. The volcanic ash of Pompeii created an airtight tomb, sealing rings in perfect condition alongside their owners. In the waterlogged, oxygen-poor depths of a peat bog, the chemical environment prevents decay, leaving an iron ring remarkably intact when it is pulled from the murky water, its metal still solid after 2,000 years. Once a ring is found, the real detective work begins. Scientists use tools the Romans could never have imagined. They analyzed the specific type of gemstone, tracing carnelian back to its source in India, or lapis lazuli to the mountains of Afghanistan, mapping the vast trade routes of the empire through a single bezel. They examined the metal's composition, finding traces of alloys that pinpoint its date of manufacture. Even the microscopic wear patterns on the carved intaglio are studied, telling us how often the ring was used to seal documents. A deeply worn groove might indicate a bureaucrat who sealed hundreds of scrolls, while a crisp, sharp carving could suggest a ring worn more for show than function. Each ring is a frozen moment, and through these methods, we can slowly melt the ice, hearing the faint echo of the person who once pressed their identity into warm wax. Your choice of ring was a public declaration of your place in the world. In a society obsessed with status and hierarchy, the signet ring was a wearable, undeniable badge of your social rank. A quick glance at a man's finger told you everything you needed to know about his wealth, his power, and his very right to participate in public life. For a Roman senator, his ring was a statement of immense authority. It was not a subtle piece of jewelry. It was often a massive, heavy band of the purest gold, a metal legally restricted to the highest echelons of society. Set into this golden band was a bezel of the finest imported stone, like a multi-layered sardonyx. The intaglio carved into its surface was a masterpiece of miniature art, depicting a detailed family crest or a portrait of the current emperor, executed with breathtaking precision. This ring was not just worn, it was displayed. Its weight and brilliance were constant, tangible reminders of the senator's privilege and the vast gulf that separated him from the common citizen. Now shift your gaze to the finger of a freedman, a former slave who had earned his liberty. His ring was a world apart. It was likely made of humble, practical iron or perhaps bronze, materials that reflected his new, yet still modest, standing. The carving on its bezel would be far simpler, often a basic symbol or a single letter for his name, crudely engraved by a less skilled hand. This ring was functional. It allowed him to conduct business and seal contracts, but it screamed of his recent past. It marked him as a man on the first rung of the social ladder, his hard-won freedom literally etched in iron. And then there were the slaves. While most slaves were forbidden from wearing rings at all, some trusted household servants might be permitted a simple band made of bone or cheap pot metal. This was not a marker of identity or authority, but a functional tool given by a master for a specific task, like sealing storage jars in the pantry. It conferred no social status, only a sliver of responsibility. This clear hierarchy, from gleaming gold to dull bone, made the Roman social order visible at a handshake. The ring was a key, yes, but it was a key that only unlocked the doors your class was permitted to enter. The very rings that sealed the fate of empires have themselves vanished into the mist of time. These lost artifacts, belonging to history's most formidable figures, represent the ultimate unsolved mysteries of the ancient world. Their absence only deepens their legendary status, fueling endless speculation among historians and treasure hunters alike. Consider the personal signet of Julius Caesar. Historical accounts suggest it was a simple gold ring, yet its carved intaglio was anything but ordinary. It likely bore the powerful image of Venus, the goddess from whom his family claimed direct descent. This was not just a seal, it was a divine endorsement of his authority. With this ring, he authenticated the orders that reshaped the Republic, the proscriptions that eliminated his rivals, and the letters that commanded his legions. Yet after his assassination on the Ides of March, his ring disappeared from the historical record. Was it stolen in the chaos, secretly buried by a loyal supporter? Or perhaps destroyed to prevent any further use of its potent symbolic power? We simply do not know. Its silence is deafening, Then there is the ring of Emperor Constantine, the man who transformed the Roman world by embracing Christianity. His signet ring must have been a profound artifact of transition, a bridge between the old world of pagan gods and the new era of the cross. Did it feature the traditional Roman eagle, or did it boldly display the Chi-Rho, the sacred monogram of Christ he reportedly saw in his vision before the Battle of the Milvian Bridge? A ring bearing the first imperial Christian symbol would be an object of staggering historical importance. Its impression in wax would have validated the Edict of Milan, granting religious tolerance throughout the empire. Yet, like Caesar's, it is gone. Perhaps it was interred with him, hidden away in a lost imperial tomb, or maybe it was melted down centuries later, its gold valued more than its immeasurable history. The fact that we can only ponder their designs, that we may never hold these keys to power in our hands, is what makes their legend so enduring and so tantalizingly alive. That Roman system of authority, solidified in wax, did not crumble with the empire's western fall. Its legacy was carried forward, a powerful idea that refused to die. The Eastern Roman Empire, what we call Byzantium, became the direct inheritor of this tradition. Here, the emperor's signet ring evolved into an even more potent symbol of divine right, its intricate carvings often blending imperial portraits with Christian iconography. The concept of a single, authoritative seal representing the head of state was preserved and sanctified. This practice echoed powerfully in the emergence of the papal ring of the fisherman. Each new pope, upon his election, is given a signet ring engraved with an image of St. Peter fishing from a boat, a direct parallel to the Roman emperor's personal seal. This ring is used to mark official papal documents, and upon a pope's death, it is ceremonially destroyed, just as the authority of a Roman official ended with his life. The thread continues unbroken into the fractured kingdoms of medieval Europe. Barbarian kings who had once fought against Roman legions quickly adopted the Roman habit of sealing. They understood its power. A parchment decree from a Frankish king, stamped with his unique seal in red wax, carried the same weight and message of authenticity as a scroll from a Roman governor 1,000 years earlier. Think of the Magna Carta, sealed by King John in 1215. That famous document was made legally binding not by a signature, but by the king's great seal pressed into wax, a direct descendant of the Roman bulla. These medieval seal rings often grew larger and more elaborate, worn on a chain around the neck as a pendant seal, but their function was identical. They were the keys to law, to land, and to royal command. So the next time you see an image of a medieval wax seal on an old document, remember you are not looking at a European invention. You are witnessing the final, enduring impression of a Roman official's ring, an echo of power that has traveled across 2,000 years. But for all their power and presence, the Roman signet ring has been shrouded in a fog of modern myth. Popular films and novels often depict these rings as elaborate spy gadgets, complete with hidden poison compartments or spring-loaded blades. The dramatic idea of an emperor flicking his wrist to release a deadly toxin into his rival's wine cup makes for thrilling cinema, but it is almost entirely fiction. The historical reality is far more subtle and in many ways more fascinating. Archaeologists have examined thousands of Roman rings. Not a single one has ever been conclusively shown to contain a secret poison reservoir. The crafting of such a tiny, intricate, and reliably safe mechanism was beyond the technology of the time, and more importantly, it was completely unnecessary. Why would a Roman noble go to such absurdly complex lengths when a trusted slave could simply slip a common poison like hemlock or arsenic directly into a drink? The true power of the ring was not in concealed assassination, but in open authority. Its mechanisms were not made of springs and levers, but of trust, law, and identity. The real magic did not happen in a secret compartment, but every single time the ring was pressed into warm wax to seal a document, authenticating a command that could move legions or transfer fortunes. This was the ring's true, and far more potent, function. It was a tool for building an empire through administration, not for dismantling one through theatrical murder. The genuine intrigue lies not in fabricated poisons, but in the profound trust a society placed in a small, carved stone to uphold its entire system of order. So the next time you see a dramatic ring in a movie, remember the quieter, more profound truth. The real weapon was the seal itself, and its target was not a single person, but the very fabric of reality, one impressed piece of wax at a time. These rings do more than whisper of power. They speak in the clear, confident voice of daily life. Each one is a primary source, a first-hand account from an individual Roman, offering us clues no history book ever could. Take the ring discovered in the ancient port city of Ostia. It was not found in a grand tomb, but in the ruins of a modest warehouse. Its carnelian bezel was carved not with a god or a myth, but with a highly detailed, single-masted merchant ship, its sail billowing. This was the personal logo of a shipowner or a merchant. He did not need the caduceus of Mercury, a generic symbol of trade. He chose his own vessel, the very source of his livelihood, to represent his identity. Every time he pressed that ring into wax to seal a bill of lading for a shipment of Egyptian grain or Spanish olive oil, he was not just signing his name. He was stamping his pride, his profession, and his most valuable asset directly onto the contract. This one small artifact transforms a crumbled wall in Ostia from an anonymous ruin into a specific, bustling office, filled with the smell of salt and the sound of deals being made. Shift the scene to a quiet street in a Roman town. Inside a building identified by other finds as a doctor's residence. Here, a signet ring was uncovered bearing the unmistakable symbol of a surgical probe next to a cupping vessel. This was the ancient equivalent of a modern doctor's brass plaque hanging outside their door. The physician who wore this ring used it to authenticate his prescriptions, to seal his recommendations for treatments, and perhaps to mark his personal correspondence with colleagues. The choice of such a specific, professional symbol tells us he saw his identity as inextricably linked to his healing art. He was not just a man who happened to be a doctor, he was a doctor in his very soul, and he wanted the world and the wax to know it. This ring makes the Hippocratic Oath tangible. It connects us directly to the hands that mixed medicines, set bones, and offered comfort, all under the authority of that tiny, carved seal. Then, there are the rings that hint at whole lifetimes of movement and story. Consider the Legionaries' iron ring, stamped with the Capricorn emblem of a legion originally stationed along the Rhine frontier. This ring was not found in a German fort, however. It was discovered hundreds of miles away, buried in the soil of Roman Britain. How did it get there? The simple, functional iron band speaks volumes. Perhaps the soldier was transferred, marching across the entire empire to reinforce the wall against northern tribes. He carried his identity and his unit pride with him on that long, arduous journey. Or maybe he survived his 25 years of service, earned his honorable discharge, and settled as a veteran farmer on land granted to him in a distant province, his old army ring a cherished keepsake from his youth. The most poignant possibility is that he fell in battle far from home, and a comrade carried his personal effects, including his ring, back to a loved one in Britain. This single, displaced artifact opens a window onto a forgotten biography of loyalty, travel, and loss. It reminds us that the rigid history of legions and frontiers was built from the fluid, personal stories of individual men. These silent witnesses in metal and stone allow us to meet these people, not as statues or names in a ledger, but through the objects they touched and the identities they carved for themselves. These anonymous masters of miniature art worked in conditions we would find astonishingly simple. Their workshop was likely a small, sunlit room in a city insula, the bustling Roman apartment block. A single high window provided the essential northern light, a steady, shadow-free illumination that was their only alternative to modern electric lamps. Here, amidst the constant hum of street life below, the gem cutter sat at a sturdy wooden bench. His world was measured in millimeters. He would secure a rough, uncut carnelian or onyx in a small lump of hard wax or resin, a makeshift vise called a dop, holding the stone steady for the long, painstaking work ahead. His most vital tool was his own body, the incredible steadiness of his hands and the sharp focus of his eyes, often strained to their absolute limit. While some artisans may have used simple magnifying lenses made from glass spheres filled with water, most relied on naked eye precision, their skill so refined they could carve details finer than a single human hair onto the hardest of stones. This was not a trade for the impatient or the clumsy. A single tremor, a moment of lost concentration, and weeks of labor could vanish in an instant, the valuable gemstone cracked or the delicate line of a goddess's profile ruined beyond repair. The pressure was immense, yet these craftsmen worked in near total obscurity, their names lost to history while their art endured for centuries. Their social standing was a complex paradox. A master gem cutter possessed a skill set as valuable as that of any sculptor working in marble, yet he was often viewed as a mere craftsman, a faceless technician in a society that celebrated the patrons who commissioned art, not the hand that created it. He was not a famous artist signing his work, but an anonymous artisan whose genius was channeled into realizing the visions of his wealthy clients. If he worked within a large, imperial workshop, he might have enjoyed a degree of financial security, serving the endless demand for seals from the emperor's bureaucracy. But most were likely small-scale entrepreneurs or skilled slaves, their lives dictated by the whims of the market and the demands of their patrons. A senator would arrive with a specific commission, a portrait of the emperor for his new ring, and the cutter had to deliver perfection. His payment depended on his ability to translate a grand, powerful idea into a reverse image carving on a surface smaller than your fingernail. He had to be more than a carver, he was a translator, turning myth, power, and personal identity into a language of stone and light. His artistry was the invisible bridge between the abstract world of Roman ideals and the physical, functional object that made those ideals a daily reality. The true test of his skill was the intellectual challenge of working in reverse. He did not simply carve an image, he had to mentally deconstruct it and rebuild it backwards, inside out and upside down. Every line, every curve, every shadow on the original drawing had to be meticulously planned in negative space. The deep groove he carved would become a raised line in the wax impression. A hollowed-out area for a god's cheek would emerge from the wax as a rounded, prominent feature. This required a kind of spatial reasoning that bordered on the superhuman. He had to hold two competing images in his mind at once: the sunken carving he was physically creating under his drill, and the positive, perfect impression it was destined to create. There was no undo button, no chance to preview the seal before the final press into wax. The first true test was the moment of truth, when the client pressed the finished ring into clay and saw if the cutter's mental gymnastics had paid off. This incredible, invisible calculation is what separates a simple stamp from a lasting work of art. These unsung masters gave form to the authority of emperors and the hopes of common soldiers. Their own identities submerged so completely into their work that they became the silent, shaping hand of Roman history itself. The final journey of a signet ring was as carefully orchestrated as its life. Upon the death of its owner, this powerful object faced a critical transition. Many rings were destined to become heirlooms, passed from father to son as a tangible link in the family chain. But this transfer was rarely as simple as just handing over the jewelry. The new heir, eager to establish his own identity, would often have the intaglio recarved. A grandfather's portrait might be meticulously ground away, the stone surface smoothed and polished to receive the grandson's chosen symbol, perhaps a lion to signify his own personal courage. The physical ring, the band itself, carried the weight of lineage, while the new carving announced the arrival of a fresh generation, ready to make its own mark on the world. Yet not every ring was meant to continue its service. For a ring destined to accompany its owner into the afterlife, a very different and rather dramatic ritual took place. It was known as killing the ring. A family member or a trusted slave would take a sharp chisel and deliberately strike the carved face of the intaglio, defacing the seal with a single, purposeful gash. This act was both profoundly practical and deeply symbolic. In practical terms, it rendered the ring useless for any earthly fraud. A smashed seal could not be pressed into wax to forge documents or plunder the deceased estate. It protected the legacy of the dead from the treachery of the living, but the symbolic meaning cut even deeper. that single chisel blow was a ritual of release. By destroying the unique image that had defined a person in life, their signature, their connection to the gods, their very identity, the living were symbolically setting that identity free. They were breaking the tether that bound the soul to its earthly authority, allowing it to journey unencumbered into the next world. The ring, which had been a key to so much in life, became in death a final, broken lock, ensuring a peaceful and secure passage for the one who had worn it. Even a carefully killed ring could not erase the profound connection between its owner and their identity. This bond between a person and their seal is powerfully illustrated by one of the most captivating modern discoveries, the Uli Ring's hoard. In the quiet English countryside of 1979, metal detectorists scanning a field in Gloucestershire uncovered not one, but 8 Roman gold signet rings, all buried together in a single ancient pit. This was no ordinary find. Each ring was a masterpiece, crafted from heavy gold and set with intricate intaglios carved into vibrant red carnelian and striped sardonyx stones. The images they revealed were a gallery of Roman Britain's elite. One ring showed a proud lion, a universal symbol of courage and power. Another depicted the goddess Bonus Eventus, a personification of successful outcomes, her figure raised in a gesture of gratitude. There was a striking image of a helmeted Mars, the god of war, and a beautiful, detailed carving of a woman holding a cornucopia, an emblem of prosperity and abundance. The quality was exceptional, clearly belonging to a wealthy, powerful family, perhaps a local governor or a supremely successful merchant, but the real mystery lies in why they were buried together. Why would someone intentionally hide such immense value and personal authority? Historians have wrestled with this puzzle for decades. One compelling theory points to the chaotic final years of Roman Britain. As imperial authority crumbled and Saxon raiders began to press inland from the coasts, a wealthy family might have gathered their most precious and powerful possessions, these rings that represented their entire identity and fortune, and buried them for safekeeping. They planned to return when the danger passed, but for reasons lost to time, they never did. Another possibility is that this was a merchant's capital, his liquid wealth solidified in gold and gems, hidden away from thieves or tax collectors. Yet the location adds another, more spiritual layer. The hoard was found near the site of a famous Romano-British temple dedicated to the god Mercury. This has led some scholars to suggest a ritual deposit, a massive offering of immense value given to the gods in a time of desperation or in gratitude for a great fortune. Were these rings a plea for protection or a thank you for success already granted? The Uli hoard refuses to give up its secret. It presents us with a locked box from the past, its contents clear and breathtaking, but its true story forever just beyond our grasp, a permanent reminder that the final meaning of these objects died with the people who trusted them with their lives. The silent surface of an ancient carnelian holds more stories than the carving itself. Modern science is now teaching us how to read them. Using technologies like high-resolution, three-dimensional scanning, researchers can peer into the microscopic world of a signet ring with astonishing clarity. This is not about seeing the artwork, but about decoding the invisible history of its use. A scanner can map the deepest grooves and the faintest scratches on an intaglio surface, creating a perfect digital replica. By analyzing this map, scientists can identify distinct wear patterns. A ring that was used constantly by a bureaucrat to seal hundreds of documents will show a smooth, polished groove along the edges of the carved design, worn down by the repeated pressure into wax. In contrast, a ring worn primarily for show, perhaps by a wealthy matron, might have a much sharper, crisper carving, its details still jagged from the craftsman's tool. The very way a person held their ring becomes visible. A slight tilt in the wear pattern might reveal if the owner was right-handed or left-handed, pressing down with a characteristic angle. These microscopic signatures tell a biography of daily use, transforming a beautiful object into a record of a lifetime of habitual motion. Beyond the wear on the stone, scientists are looking for the ghost of the sealant itself. Residue analysis, a technique still in its early stages for this application, aims to detect the faintest chemical traces left behind in the ring's crevices. The idea is as simple as it is revolutionary. Every time a ring was pressed into material, a tiny, almost invisible amount of that substance could have been trapped within the intricate lines of the carving. The goal is to identify these particles. Was it beeswax from a local Roman apiary, or a more expensive imported blend? Was it the distinct clay from a specific region used for sealing amphora? If a unique chemical signature can be isolated, the potential is staggering. Imagine matching the residue in the grooves of a ring discovered in a villa in Gaul to the specific clay of a sealed document found in an archive in Rome. Such a discovery would be the ultimate archaeological handshake, physically connecting an individual to a specific piece of parchment they touched 2,000 years ago. It would close a loop that history has left open, moving from the abstract idea of ownership to a provable chemical link. This is the new frontier where the smallest speck of forgotten wax could finally tell us exactly whose hand held the key to Rome's secrets. That final chemical whisper connects us across an unimaginable gulf of time. A Roman signet ring is so much more than a relic in a museum case. Its enduring power over our imagination comes from a rare and potent fusion. It is art, a masterpiece of miniature sculpture. It is technology, a brilliant solution for identity verification. It is power, a tool that commanded armies and sealed fortunes. And above all, it is personal identity, a direct line to a single human being. This combination is what makes these objects feel so immediate, so alive. When you look at a ring carved with a ship, you are not just seeing a symbol of trade. You are meeting the merchant who owned that vessel, feeling his pride, and understanding his daily worries about cargo and weather. The empire of the Caesars was a sprawling, impersonal machine of conquest and administration. But these rings are the fingerprints left on that machine by the people who actually lived within it. They shrink the vast, intimidating scale of Roman history down to a human size. They transform marble statues and crumbling ruins into stories of fathers, soldiers, merchants, and doctors who loved, feared, and hoped just as we do. They are tangible pieces of a world that has otherwise vanished, and they refuse to fall completely silent. Every unanswered question, from the fate of Caesar's ring to the secret of the Uli hoard, is an invitation. These small, stubborn objects continue to whisper their secrets, challenging us to listen just a little more closely. From a simple tool for sealing documents, we have traced the signet ring's journey into the very heart of Roman belief. It was far more than a functional key. It was a magical shield against evil, a wearable prayer to the gods. It was an unbreakable chain of status, broadcasting a man's place in society from the gleam of his gold to the humility of his iron. And most intimately, it was a personal legacy, a tiny stage where myths were lived out and family histories were carved in stone. These rings were not cold artifacts dug from the earth. They were the most personal tools the Romans ever possessed, extensions of their hands, their hearts, and their identities. Next time you see a simple piece of jewelry, remember the power it might hold. What secrets would your signet ring tell? Let us know in the comments which secret of the Roman signet ring you find most intriguing, and subscribe for more journeys into the mysteries of the ancient world.